All right, for a legal perspective, let's bring in Neama Rahmani now, president of West Coast Trial Lawyers and former federal prosecutor. Neama, thanks so much for being here.
Of course, thanks for having me, Natasha. I live and work in Los Angeles, so I'm living this in real time.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Let's just start there. I mean, we hear this being described as a war zone. What are you experiencing?
It is. My office is downtown, and the protests are escalating every week. Now, depending on what side you're on, they're protests or riots, but I'm not surprised that Governor Newsom and Trump, they disagree. Obviously, this is a hot button political issue, but legally speaking, Trump is certainly within his rights to deploy the National Guard. And really the question is, are we going to see active duty military boots on the ground for the first time in decades in Los Angeles?
Yeah, tell me about that, because conditions must be met for the president to bring in the National Guard without a governor's buy-in. Based on your background, your legal background, why is the president's federalization legally valid here?
It is because under Title 10, and typically when you're dealing with the National Guard, they're subject to the authority of the governor under Title 32. It's very rare to have a situation like this where the National Guard will be brought in over the governor's objection or without buy-in from the governor. The last time that I can remember was in the South when we're talking about segregation and, after Brown v. Board and the years following after to make sure that schools are desegregated. So now you have this political disagreement. But under Title 10, Natasha, Trump can federalize the National Guard. So even though they're typically under the governor's control, the law is clear. Federal law does allow the president to federalize those troops. So that's why the first wave of 2,000 are being brought in to help quell this unrest.
Well, and let me ask, I mean, we're hearing the governor saying that he was going to sue the Trump administration starting tomorrow. On what grounds? And does he have a strong case there?
I don't think he has a strong case. He's going to argue, and he's going to go through his Attorney General, Rob Bonta, to say that this is commandeering. So what can't be done under the Constitution is the federal government can't commandeer state and local law enforcement officials. That's why you heard LAPD say, we're not going to enforce civil immigration law. So they can't do that. But because the law is clear when it comes to enforcing federal law and protecting federal agents, I've had members of Congress ask me, Neama, what do you think? Because I don't think there's anything that we can do as Democrats to prevent this from happening. And I think a lot of this is political theater more than anything. Of course, this lawsuit will be filed, but I can't see any court, even the most liberal judge, standing in the way of the federal government enforcing federal law. And it's pretty clear that immigration law is exclusively a federal government issue. We saw during the
Neama,
Biden.
let me ask you, because we're almost out of time, but I want to make sure to get this in with you. 10 arrests today, 29 confirmed yesterday. And based on your background as a federal prosecutor, what charges may these individuals be facing? I mean, we're talking about firing active fireworks, throwing Molotov cocktails, ramming police officers, injuring them with motorcycles. Is that prosecution at the federal or the state level? What are we talking about?
Yeah, I expect those prosecutions to be at the federal level. We have a new U.S. attorney appointed by Trump, and he's already out there tweeting and about these cases. So you're talking about terrorism charges, maybe even up to attempted murder. So
Wow.
very serious charges here, Natasha. And I would expect those charges to be filed as early as this week.
All right. Neama Rahmani, I know you're in this area as well. Please continue to stay safe and really appreciate your insights as a former federal prosecutor tonight. Thank you.
Of course, thanks for having me.